Hey everyone, welcome to the fourth episode of the Falcon and Winter Soldier review by me and Tristan here on the Movie Changeup podcast, where each week we come in on Friday night and review the most recent episode of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I don't remember what this episode was called. Do you have it, Tristan? Or The Whole World is Watching, which is a really good episode for a really good title for this episode considering the ending, and I think that's going to play a big factor in the story moving forward. Tristan, what are your kind of overall thoughts on this episode? Yeah, it's definitely up there for me. It might, on a rewatch where I can see kind of the other episodes, and I just realized your mic was muted, so that's great. Uh,
I
yeah,
liked it, guys. A good episode. I was a fan. The show took a while to get started, but now I'm really into it, and I'm glad this one was great. It might be my favorite episode so far. So I'm looking forward to finishing up the season, and so far, so good for me.
yeah, I'm definitely gonna fix that on the podcast version. Yeah, I really like this episode. I thought it was, one of the better episodes of the series. I mean, this is only the fourth one, but it's probably my favorite so far. Um, I guess to start off at the beginning, trying to think how this episode start. I literally just rewatched it for the second time. You're a big notes
So
guy.
basically, the first part of the episode is sort of Sam and Bucky and now Zemo, and they're on their search for Carly, who
Yeah.
has the super soldier serums, and she's trying to, meanwhile, be debating on what she's going to do with them, if they're going to take them or not. So the first half episode of the episode is Sam and Bucky on the tail of Carly. Meanwhile, new Captain America and Battlestar are on the tail of Sam and Bucky. So they have this like cat and mouse chase going on. I really like it a lot. I think they're doing a lot with Zemo more than I thought they would do with him. Like in the
Yeah.
trailer, I thought, oh, he's just gonna be like the bad guy or like one of the pawns of a bad guy. But they've done a lot to develop his character and to make him this Hannibal Lecter kind of, or like Blacklist kind of character, where he's just like he's a bad guy, but he's alongside with the heroes. He's had his own agenda and his own game, but he's not necessarily like fighting against their goals. So I really like what they're doing with Zemo in this, especially in the last two episodes are just great Zemo episodes.
Yeah, it's shown he's very much a gray character. He's not completely good, but he's also not completely bad. Like if they were to make a movie that was wholly from Zemo's character, you'd be like, this is a good person. Like he's done some bad things, but I mean, if you look at Sam's killed people too, and we look at him as like, oh, he's a good guy on the show. Like Zemo, his family was killed by super soldiers, and he sees super soldiers as bad, and he's like, I just don't think there should be super soldiers, and you got a point, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of morally gray in a lot of the characters here. I think that's what they're doing the most work with here is people like John Walker, who could just be like the one note bad guy. He took on the Captain America shield. He doesn't deserve it. He's not Steve Rogers, so he's bad. And they could have made him very one note. They could have made everybody one note, especially the enemy, the Flag Smashers. I think Marvel has a problem with villains a lot, where they build their heroes a lot. They do a lot of good interactions and dialogue with their heroes, but their villains are sort of like the secondary thing in
Yeah.
a lot of their movies. And I think this is really showing their strength can be in the villains if they
Yeah.
wanted to. Like they've done the work to establish Bucky and the Falcon and Sharon Carter. We don't need to get them built up anymore. And now is their chance to really develop these new characters that and give break against that mold, break against that like preconceived idea that Marvel's villains are bad, and slowly but surely start giving us good villains.
Yeah, because like Carly, I mean, it's hard because there's no true villain in this series so far except for maybe Walker, and like, cause it's weird because at the start of the show it's like, okay, he kind of has his own way of doing things. He's not exactly who you want as the next Captain America, but I can kind of see where he's going. And as the show goes on, and especially by the end of this episode, it's like, okay, he's fully the villain of this show so far. Until we might meet the Power Broker and be like, okay, maybe the Power Broker is the overall villain of this show, but as of right now, it's definitely John Walker.
Yeah, they built up the Power Broker even more this episode, so I definitely think he's gonna show up at some point by the end of the season. But
He,
I'm starting he or maybe Sharon Carter. But I think your theory that it's probably going to be like a long-term Disney Plus villain more so than just the villain of this show is probably what they're going to go for. I imagine it's Thunderbolt Ross or somebody like that that's going to bring them in to be like a long-running
Yeah,
behind the scenes kind of villain of the Disney Plus shows.
yeah,
But yeah, I'm super impressed by their new Captain America more than anything on the show. I think that was where they could have way too easily gone over the line and like made him way too on the nose or made him too much of a political kind of story. And I think that this show perfectly walks that line of talking about politics and talking about political issues while not making that the entire focus of the show. You can easily watch this and just enjoy the action and enjoy like the drama of the characters and not really be invested in the political agenda. But if you're not into the MCU super much and you're not really into a lot of the characters, you can watch this and be like, okay, what are they saying about the politics here? What are they trying to use
yeah,
these characters to do? So I
yeah,
really think Disney Plus, out of these two shows in a row now, I think that they've done a good job of making
yeah.
it for fans, but also making it appeal to people who aren't necessarily sold on the MCU as a whole right now.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting things to me is the things that make John Walker a villain are not like his politics or anything. It's more of like his personal story. You know, it's not like he's like, oh, flag smashers are bad. It's more like his way of dealing with the flag smashers. Of kind of like, I like his story of basically the weight of being Captain America is just too much for him. And because there was even that moment of like when he gets beat up by the women from Wakanda, and he's like, they're not even super soldiers, and he realizes he lost. It's like that's the moment where you knew he was definitely gonna take the serum that he found. And
Yeah,
that,
you can feel his desperation. I love that scene. I didn't mean to talk over you, but
oh,
I
you're
do
fine.
love you set up a bit that scene where him and Battlestar are sort of talking about the morals of taking the I was gonna say taking the vaccine, but taking the superhero serum. You have that debate where he's like, should I take it? Should I not? Is it going to change who I am? And they have that moment like, oh, you're a medal winner. You have three. I don't know if they're Medal of Honors or what he got within the universe of this show, but he has three high profile military honors, and he has that line of like, yeah, well, what I had to do to get those didn't feel very honorable. It didn't feel like I was doing the right thing.
Yeah,
So you can see that moral question was always in him. It wasn't just something that came about with the superhero serum. That's always something I hate about comic books in general. Is like, oh, they take a character and then there's some like random like plot device that comes in and changes his whole personality so they can be a villain. And I think this really shows that he has a personality that the serum kind of enhances, but it didn't like fully turn him from good to bad or something like that. He was a complex character from the start.
yeah. It goes back to what is it, Stanley Tucci that plays the doctor in Captain America: The First Avenger. It like doesn't add anything or like take anything away. It just you know shows off what's already there.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. I think this show feels very much hand in hand with the Captain America movies. It feels like this could have been Captain America 4 essentially.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it feels like it's not only the same characters but the same kind of
yeah,
tones and the same themes and I think it calls back a lot to the first Captain America, which I like. It's one of my kind of underrated MCU favorites that's gotten overshadowed a lot by Winter Soldier.
mm,
And I think whether it's the music, whether it's some of the questions and the characters, it's really calling back to that movie along with the other two.
yeah. And there were moments too, like where it kind of reminded me of some scenes that they have like with Batman, where Sam goes in and he's like, "I'm not going in to fight." He just goes in to talk with Carly and reason with Carly, and I feel like that was more Steve Rogers than anything John Walker has done, which is I think partially why Steve wanted to give Sam the shield and thought Sam would be the next like the perfect next Captain America, even though he didn't have any superpowers.
Yeah, this show seems like it's going to be Sam earning his stripes and like proving
Yeah,
himself not just to the world around him but to himself that he's Captain America, that he's earned it, that
yeah,
he deserves it, that he doesn't have to be as good as Steve Rogers. He just has to be as good of a Sam Wilson as he can be. I think part of that's going to be you're
yeah,
never going to be able to match Steve Rogers and the guy who can lift Thor's hammer. You're not going to be that,
yeah.
but you can use your individual life experience and your individual connections to the world, to your family, and make
Mm.
Captain America out of that. So I'm really excited to see what Sam's future is.
Yeah, because I think it's like showing, especially like how he's working kind of with everyone from Zemo to Carly to, even trying to work with the U.S. agent, or I mean not U.S. agent, but John Walker, even though that relationship's not going great. I think that's partially showing why he'd be a good Captain America.
What did you think of the scene with, I think it's the Dora Milaje, the uh, troops from Wakanda who came in and had that fight? They had them set up last episode, and then this it
Yeah.
was like a big fight where they finally are like, all right, time's up. Zemo is ours, and of course, Battlestar and Captain America are all there at the same time, so they get in this kind of
Yeah, I thought it was like a
brawl.
fun fight scene. It was definitely a lot of knives, which I was a fan of. I thought that was kind of a fun thing. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a good scene.
Yeah, I thought it was funny when they were fighting Captain America at first, and Bucky and Sam are just kind of standing there,
Yeah.
like watching.
Yeah.
And Sam's like, "We should do something." And Bucky just has that line he shouts out, like, "You're looking real good there, John. Looking strong."
Yeah. I
While
love
he's getting his ass kicked.
I like the moment too where one of them like literally disarms Bucky and like pushes the buttons in or whatever, and his arm falls off, and he just felt, you could see on his face, he just felt violated. Like he
Yep.
was like, he looked at his arm on the ground, and number one, he didn't know it could do that, and number two, like he just the fact that she did that, he just was not happy with. He just was like sick almost.
I know you could tell he was like, did not expect that,
Yeah.
and felt like his personal space was violated a little bit.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was like built as like a failsafe into
Mm.
his system, like when she said at the first scene, like, "Oh, I'm not gonna let you hurt anyone." Is that like what she was referring to? Like if he
Yeah.
does end up going bad, she has
Yeah.
this like specific pressure point you can press where his arm's gonna fall off and he can't
Yeah.
really do anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
I thought that first scene was pretty good too. We're seeing a flashback to when Bucky was staying in Wakanda,
Oh yeah, I
and
love
he's
that.
getting
I love
sort of
that
nursed
opening.
by
Yeah.
by this fire, and she's
Mm.
saying the words from, I think they're from Winter Soldier. They might have been from Civil War, like the
Yeah,
brainwashing
it's
words from
Winter
Hydra.
Soldier. Yeah. Yeah, I think like that scene, like every time they flash Wakanda, makes me think more and more that if Bucky survives the series, which I had like a flash of, like, what if Bucky doesn't survive this show? Like his final moment is sacrificing himself for Sam or somebody else, and that's kind of it. But I think if he survives this show, he's gonna go by White Wolf and not the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and I'm curious. Like we've said before, I don't know how big Disney wants to go with these shows. I don't know if they're gonna kill off a major character
Mm.
in between, then they come back for like the next Avengers or whatever, and suddenly Bucky's not there. I wonder if people will be like, "Well,
Yeah,
what happened to Bucky?"
but part of me
But when
wonders
there's
too.
side character,
Yeah, part of me wonders, in a world without Steve Rogers, where if that one guy comes back, whose name I can't remember, who becomes um, Sam's kind of sidekick, who takes the role of Falcon when Sam becomes Captain America, like, what role does Bucky really have in the story anymore?
yeah, I'm not sure what Bucky's role is gonna be. If he'll be some kind of like middle ground between
Yeah,
Wakanda and the Avengers, if he'll be some kind
yeah,
of
yeah. Like I could,
anti-hero.
like I could see that because of everything with Chadwick Boseman, if he's kind of the tie between the Avenger, if they kind of use him as that instead of, I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be Black Panther, but like you said, he's kind of the connective tissue between the Avengers and Wakanda for now, at least, until they have a new Black Panther established.
Yeah, I didn't expect to see Wakanda. I didn't really expect to get
Yeah,
outside of. Obviously, it was only one scene, but when that
yeah.
came up and it said, "Oh, Wakanda," I was like,
And
"Oh,
it's
look, we're
definitely
really
like
getting out
it's
there."
it's definitely like some woods in either Northern California or Florida somewhere. Like there was no Wakanda-ness to it at all. It was just like some woods.
No, no, look in the background though. It's Wakanda. We promise.
Yeah, yeah. If you look behind the trees that you can't see behind, Wakanda's there. Even though
Yeah, we
like
did the
if
CG shop for like a second.
that they probably like lifted straight from Black Panther Endgame or something. But yeah, because I think it's funny if you go back and watch like Black Panther. There's no like real woods around at all.
That is true. It's not in the woods at all. Now that you
It's like
mentioned that,
a
it's
desert
like on a
kind of.
mountainside or something.
Yeah, it's like straight desert. Trying to. Do you want to just jump to the last scene? Because I feel like both of us have kind of been putting it off, but this
Yeah, I've
whole
been trying to.
episode. Oh, I will say one of the things I did love is they're trying to get the information of where this like woman's funeral would be, and like Sam and Bucky, they go in like full charge and they're like interrogating people and stuff, and then Zemo just kind of skips along singing his little children's lullaby song, and he has his candies and he talks to the children because the children are just smart enough to know the information, but no one remembers that they have the information. So no one really tells them like not to say anything. So that little girl tells Zemo exactly where the funeral's gonna be and kind of helps him out. And I thought that was really.
Yeah,
I thought it just kind of showed like Zemo's like. It did two things. It showed like how smart Zemo is, but that he's also not like a mustache twirling like evil villain.
I think too the kids reminded Zemo of his own
Yeah.
child that he lost in Sokovia. So I think that was a good like humanizing moment. Like you said, he's not just like an evil Hydra
Yeah.
Red Skull kind of villain. He has this humanity to him.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool too to see him in action, see like him as a spy sort of, and I think that was a fun scene there. He had the candy, the Turkish delight, and he was teasing the kids with it and using it to sort of like get information out of them, like Barry Squid from Game of Thrones. He always has that little
Yeah.
like web of,
Yeah.
of spiders. I'm
Yeah.
super impressed by Zemo. I know we're going to talk about the final scene in a second, but we talked about Zemo a lot. But I just think in Civil War he was like a nothing character to me. I was like the whole story around him is interesting, but he's not that interesting. And in 2 episodes now, he's become one of my favorite characters in the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really crazy like how much you can see how TV can develop characters. Because if I were to rank Marvel villains, Zemo, John Walker, and Catherine Hahn's character from WandaVision are all gonna be in my like top 7 or 8, and that's in a franchise with 22 movies.
Yeah, I'm the more we see from this, the more I'm excited for future shows. I just can't wait to see what they do
Yeah.
next with this Disney Plus universe.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, the final scene, I love that the the Carly's friend in kind of early in the episode was talking about how he looked up to Captain America and like Captain America was kind of like his proof that there are still good people out there. And then at the end, he gets his face caved in with Captain America's shield.
Brutal scene. Yeah, we kind
Yeah.
of danced around it for this conversation, but that's just because I think that's going to be what dominates the whole conversation of the
Yeah.
episode. That shot, the final shot of the episode of him standing there with the blood and the shield, just kind
Yeah.
of looking around at the crowd, like that's something that feels ripped out of a comic book page, even though it isn't. I don't think it
Mm.
feels like it has the iconography, that big kind of epic feel. I think it's going to be a shot in a scene that
Yeah.
we remember and talk about a lot in the MCU, and the way we talk
Yeah.
about this show and the way we debate about how far is Disney going to go with these shows and with this
Yeah.
universe. And I think this pushed it to another level we haven't seen in terms of violence, in terms of gore. I
Yeah.
thought it was really powerful and effective.
Yeah, like the bottom quarter. It wasn't like, oh, there was like sprinkles of blood on the shield. No, like the bottom quarter of that shield was just painted in blood.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was expecting it to cut away or something like that. Like maybe he hammers a shield down and you cut to commercial and that's, or not the commercial, you cut to credits and then that's the end of the episode. But they kept pushing it and they really went
Yeah.
for it. And I think they didn't want any ambiguity in that scene. They wanted us to be able to see John Walker
Yeah.
unhinged and his
Yeah.
fears coming to be fully realized. He was afraid of what the serum would do to him. And now it's pushed him beyond the point of return. I wonder how the government's going to react to this, how the military is going to react to this. He's
Yeah.
in a foreign country doing some, I don't know if he's been approved or not by the government to be out there, but that's not
Yeah.
a good look for the new Captain America to be murdering people on the street like that.
Yeah, and they can't hide it because 40 people were around him all filming it with their phones. So, like, it's going to get out. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, maybe he'll get away with it. He's not getting away with it. And one of the things, to go back earlier, that I liked is, like, he picks up the serum and you're not sure if he took it or not. And there's a scene that kind of builds up to it, which he throws the shield and the shield like gets embedded in the wall and he pulls it out. And it's one of those things you don't really think about because you're kind of used to the shield doing that with Steve Rogers behind it. But then when it's revealed, okay, yeah, he definitely did take the serum, and you look back at that moment, it's like, oh, it should have been obvious he had the serum then, because a regular guy can't just throw the shield into a wall. And so I like that moment, but yeah, it was just furthermore of him having the serum, just totally wrecking this guy.
Yeah, and you mentioned this scene beforehand too of the flag smasher mentioning like, oh, I looked up to Captain America. He was someone that made me think good guys are still out there. And Carly reinforces this theme that's been going throughout the whole show of like symbols only have the meaning that men and women apply to them. Like
Yeah.
the shield means different things in different hands, and what it meant in Steve Rogers' hand is like this aspirational kind of figure, the guy who's going to do the right thing even when the right thing seems impossible. and now you're seeing it in John
Yeah,
Walker's hands, and it's almost the complete foil of that. It's a guy who is going to let his emotions get to him, the guy who's going to sometimes take the easy way out because it's not going to be as much work for him, and
yeah,
that's not Steve Rogers Captain
yeah,
America at all. But now that he has a shield, that's what it's going to be seen as. So I'm really curious how
yeah,
the public reaction will be in this universe. If people are going to be making excuses, I think that's something they could do if they're going for that political commentary. Maybe they're going to be like, oh well, he has a hard job. He was under a lot of stress, and maybe he just had to let out some steam, and maybe he went too far. Sure, but
yeah,
you could hear these excuses come rolling in pretty
yeah.
easily if they wanted to go that route.
Yeah, it's like one of those things like you were talking about. The symbol of the shield before was like a symbol of hope, and now it's a symbol of oppression, basically. Of like he's the one thing the flag smashers were fighting against.
Yeah, and you wonder if he'll reinvigorate people. He'll become like this figurehead villain that people are
Yeah,
going against, and a
yeah,
lot of similar political things as well. Like you have these people who had these high profile kind of events, and they become the center of a big debate that's
yep.
we've been talking about for how long about people on video doing things they shouldn't do, and then that becomes like the vocal point of political movements. And I think that this could be that for the MCU.
Oh, for sure. I think this. I definitely think like they've been kind of going with this whole Sokovia thing from Avengers Age of Ultron until Endgame, and I think Endgame, like everything after Endgame, is going to be all about the blip, and everything's going to relate to the blip. But I also feel like this whole thing with John Walker could be kind of a thing on its own, especially maybe in the Disney Plus pocket of this universe of like Captain America's shield being in a guy's forehead. It's kind of
Yeah, and
a
like you said,
turning
it's coming
point.
in. It's coming into a world that's already divided and tense
Yeah.
because of the blip. And we've had these people who are slowly trying to reacclimate to society, and then there's probably this could easily be like a turning point. Like whether or not this is a moment people look back on is like, oh, this is the moment everything changed, but it could be like people are at a point of intensity over this blip, and then this one thing happens, and it kind of unravels all of this like fake social peace that's going on right now, and people are really going to start to be affected by the blip and affected by the social
Yep.
change that's happening around them.
Yeah, I definitely could see it also be a turning point too for like the citizens in the MCU's kind of opinion of the heroes. Like right now, heroes have a high like social stock. Like everyone loves all of the Avengers. Like the Avengers pretty much saved the universe. Blah blah blah. You know, everyone mourned Tony Stark. I'm sure people love, for the most part, love Spider Man. All of that. You see Captain America's shield decapitate a guy. I could, especially like a relatively innocent guy. I feel like all of that could just be washed away, and that could be something moving forward. Of the heroes are not exactly looked at as heroes.
I would like that because that's something I think is very present in comic books and not so much in the MCU. Is that the heroes are not like the status quo enforcers. They work against the police in a lot of situations. They work against the government in a lot of situations, and I think the MCU has for this whole run pretty much had the Avengers be sort of hand in hand with the military, hand in hand with the government, and not be those kind of vigilante heroes that I know them so much to be. So I'd be very curious to see that reinforced again. Like we saw in the Sokovia Accords, there's these moments of the government trying to check heroes and ultimately it not going through. So I wonder if this plus the blip plus uh, Wanda taking over Westview, like those are the kind of things that I feel like really could re-inspire this crackdown on heroes, especially ahead of the
Yeah,
eventual X-Men showing up. That could be their excuse to this is suddenly why we don't like mutants now,
yeah,
because
that's
if I
very
think
true.
if X-Men show up right now, people will be like, okay, cool, more superheroes, and there has to be a reason for the society to fear them.
Yeah, if you have WandaVision's whole thing, you have, you know, Captain America's out there just murking people. I mean, Loki's show's not really going to affect anything because people didn't like Loki anyways, at least in the MCU like universe. Hawkeye, there could be something that goes on there in that show. I don't know how much damage a guy with a bow and arrow could do, but who would have thought a guy with a shield could be like ruin Captain America forever for the people inside the MCU? So who knows?
Yeah, I'm really curious how much they're building from this. We've talked about it before, but I think this sets up a lot for the future of the MCU shows on Disney Plus. There's only what, like 2 or 3 episodes left in this
Yeah,
show.
there's two because there's six total. Yeah, two.
Yeah, so we're obviously not going to cover everything in 2 episodes. I think the Power Broker is something that's probably going to be like a finale reveal and left to
Yeah.
another show, like Secret Wars maybe or something like that. It could be something where they bring the Power Broker back.
Yeah, or she could like if I could see it being like the main villain in Hawkeye or something like that, because then you have because you could kind of have those similar themes too of like Kate Bishop not feeling adequate because she doesn't have any powers, and it's like Clint Barton's like I didn't have any powers either, and I stood toe to toe with all of the Avengers, and so you kind of have that, and so maybe that's kind of thing. The Power Broker maybe tempts Kate Bishop or something like that. So I could definitely see the Power Broker showing up in that show. Maybe the Power Broker is what gives She-Hulk her powers.
Yeah, it could be the Power Broker is what the Young Avengers come together to fight against in
Yeah,
the eventual Young Avengers team up.
yeah.
Depends how long they're going to run this Power Broker storyline out, but I'd be shocked if he's like solved by the end of this
No,
series. There's
especially
only two
because we
episodes
haven't.
left and we haven't even seen them.
If we saw the Power Broker and they're defeated by the end of uh this series, like it would very much feel like an Iron. It would have to be like an Iron Man 3 situation where it's like some nerdy kid in his basement that's like a total dweeb that like somehow synthesized the serum from like the Hulk's blood or like Captain America's blood, and then they're just like giving it out for money. Like there's no way this could be like a big powerful villain that we discover who they are and take out in 2 episodes time.
Yeah, at this point with 2 episodes left, I'm feeling more and more inclined towards it being an established character and not
Yeah,
just somebody new.
yeah, that's why I'm definitely there's. I feel like there's three people it could be, and that's. But I'm almost ruling out Ross. I feel like the three people I think it could be is Justin Hammer, Mr. Blue from the first Incredible Hulk, or Sharon Carter.
I'm still leaning towards Thunderbolt Ross. I'm not sure why. I just think
Yeah,
that's a good way to bring him in and not have to worry about making a new Hulk movie while still using all
yeah.
the characters.
I just feel like he's too much working like Power Broker. I feel like he's working too much against the government, and Thunderbolt Ross, like basically as far as the MCU goes, is the government. Like I think we've seen the president
That is
once in
true.
like Iron Man 2 or Iron Man 3. Like whenever you have the quote unquote government in the MCU, it's always been represented by Ross.
I have one more theory to throw out for Power Broker, and
Okay.
that I'm thinking maybe Nick Fury. Because we've seen that Nick Fury has been replaced by a scroll on Earth, and the real Nick Fury is working out in space,
Yeah.
post Endgame. So I wonder if Nick Fury is now this like outside force working outside of Shield, working outside of the government, trying to some way or another broke power between these
Yeah.
big moving corporations and these people who are battling for power post blip.
Yeah.
That's my outside black sheep theory. Considering my one last week was that Battlestar is going to be the new Captain America, and I don't think that's happening now. So I'll move
Yeah,
on
I
from
don't
that
think
one. And
that's
now
true.
my new theory is that Nick Fury is a power broker.
Yeah, I mean that's potential. What about someone like Maria Hill, or even that's how they bring back like basically Kevin Feige's like, yeah, Agents of Shield is definitely not canon because after Agent Coulson quote unquote died in the first Avengers movie, he like became a villain. Yeah, that's how much Agents of Shield didn't happen.
Yeah, I was wondering if they'd ever bring back Coulson for anything because he's so tied to Agents of Shield. They'd have to explain at least a little bit of like how is he alive and how much of that happened and how much of it didn't. Because they bring him back and he's just the same Coulson. Well, I don't know. I didn't watch most of Agents of Shield.
I watched none of Agents of Shield. I'm just gonna assume he wasn't a villain in that show, so I think bringing him back as the power broker to be like, yeah, Agents of Shield didn't happen would kind of be funny. People
That would
would
be
be
pretty funny.
pissed, but I think it was hilarious. Just for all of the
Yeah,
people that take this stuff way too seriously, of like what's canon and what's not. It's like, hey, fun fact, it's all fake, anyways. So
yeah. I've been recently reading through a bunch of comic books and trying to figure out the what's canon, what's
yeah,
not, what's in the timeline, what's not. Eventually, you
yeah,
realize like, oh, none of it matters.
yeah,
Some of it's in canon, some of it's not. But who cares? It's superheroes, comic book, cartoon people are fighting, and that's
yeah.
all I really wanted.
Yeah, like I can understand like finding out what's canon to like read like one storyline. That's cool. That's fine. I've done that. But like as far as like uh, something like the MCU, like oh, are the Netflix shows canon? It's like who gives a shit, man. All those shows sucked except Daredevil season 1 and 2. So
I didn't watch most of them. I watched Daredevil. I watched Jessica Jones, and that was it.
Yeah, Daredevil season 1 and 2 were great. Jessica Jones season 1 was okay. First half of Luke Cage season 1 was great. Second half, garbage. Punisher was okay. Didn't even watch Iron Fist. And I tried to watch The Defenders. That that was straight garbage.
You can tell they're putting the effort in on these shows, though. They're very
Yeah.
much, whether or not they connect directly or importantly, you can tell they're at least trying
Yeah.
to connect thematically and connect some of
Yeah.
the characters and make it not feel like you're wasting your time watching these.
No, because, like, I feel like there's gonna be lines and references and moments in future like movies where it's like, oh, that's from WandaVision, or oh, that's from Falcon and Winter Soldier, or oh, that's from Loki, or oh, that's from Hawkeye or whatever.
Yeah, it's feeling to me a lot like Clone Wars felt for the Star Wars prequels. Like, you don't need to watch Clone Wars to follow
Yeah.
the plot, but when you do watch it, it works just so much better. All the
Yeah.
little moments that are there, and when you see
Yeah.
characters show up, like next time we see Bucky, next time we see Falcon, there's gonna be a lot more history there than there was before.
Yeah, like there could be a moment in where he like Bucky for whatever reason is fighting the Wakandas again, and she reaches for his arm and he like stops her. And if you watch Falcon and Winter Soldier, you're gonna know exactly why. And if you haven't, it's gonna be a quick moment that you're gonna be like, well, that was off. But then before you know it, the fight keeps going, and you don't really think about it.
Yeah, I just can't wait. I've gone in and out in my MCU fandom. Sometimes I'm in, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm not so much in, and these shows have really pulled me back in.
Yeah.
As soon as I thought I was out, they pulled me back in, and that's where I'm at now. I can't wait to see what's next.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. This is definitely a high point in the MCU for me. Like, like I remember Captain Marvel. I'm like, oh man, if Endgame doesn't hit, this could kind of be the beginning of the end for the MCU. But Endgame came out, and for being an MCU movie was great. And then these shows have been good. WandaVision, not so much. That show sucked. It didn't suck, but I just think looking back when people like rewatch it, knowing that all of their theories weren't true, that oh maybe this show wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah, for me, WandaVision was like a fun show to watch that ended up not really going to anywhere, and this show feels like it's definitely going
Yeah.
somewhere. It feels like they had a beginning, middle, and end planned out for the plot, and there might be some bumps along the road getting there, but I think it definitely helps if they have a goal to get to and they have a story to tell. So it's easy to look past like some small scenes that might not work, or some lines that aren't as
Yeah.
good, or some improv that isn't as good as it could be,
Yeah.
because you can tell they're telling a story and they're basing it in their characters and they're doing the work there to make it feel earned and feel worth the time.
Yeah, for sure. Like even if the show ended tomorrow, like even if this was like the final episode, like narratively it wouldn't make sense, but I'd still feel like it was quality programming that I watched. I'm like, okay, this was good. I got something out of this.
So 2 episodes left. Do you have any predictions for what they're gonna do to wrap all this up?
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be. I think Carly's gonna team up with, especially now. Carly's gonna team, and most of the Flag Smashers, I assume, if not all of the Flag Smashers, are gonna team up with Bucky and Falcon, and it's gonna be like, I'm trying to think, Zemo. Yeah, I'm trying to think who else would be on uh, John Walker's side, just like the military. So it's gonna be them versus the Flag Smashers, Zemo, Falcon, and uh, Bucky against just fake Captain America and the U.S. military. Is that like what our final fight is?
I hope they bring in someone to back him up, because I really liked the dynamic between him and Battlestar, and it was unfortunate to see Battlestar meet his untimely end this episode, but
Yeah,
I hope he's given at least somebody else to play off of.
Battlestar had to die because Battlestar was basically, his Jiminy Cricket to his Pinocchio. Like, he was the only one that kept him calm down, because I think he would have went off the edge earlier if it wasn't for Battlestar. And with Battlestar gone, it's like he's a lost cause.
Yeah, I'm very curious if they'll bring in someone to be his backup now, because we are building up this team of rogues versus this team of heroes. Whether or not it's an established character or not, I really don't know what to expect for these 2 episodes. I wonder if they're going to bring back Isaiah, who had the one really good scene in the early episode 2, I think it was. He came in.
Yeah,
I'd like to see him come back for a scene towards the end.
Yeah, that'd be cool if he like came back and we got like a throwdown. You just see this old man and he just fucking kicks ass.
Yeah, him versus John Walker.
Oh, I'd watch that. I'd watch fucking Wyatt Russell get his shit kicked in. Not because I dislike
Wyatt
Wyatt
Russell is
Russell.
great in this.
Yeah, Wyatt Russell is great, and people that talk shit about him on Twitter are stupid because I guess they can't separate a fictional character from a real person.
Yeah, they're sending death threats to this guy for playing a character that's. And he's not even
Yeah,
like the
I've seen
darkest villain of the MCU.
I've seen
He's like morally complex and interesting, and people are like, no.
yeah, I've seen so many complaints about John Walker that it's like you're just dumb because they're like this guy's like a bad Captain America. Like he just goes around like beating people up and he doesn't have the same values as Steve Rogers. He's just like a bad Captain America. I don't get it. It's like you clearly don't get it because that's the fucking point. The point of this whole show is that he is a bad Captain America. If you're mad at him being a bad Captain America, you're supposed to be. That's the point of the show. That doesn't mean the show's bad. But apparently some people out there think that.
Some people, like you said, they can't separate fact from fiction. They see stuff on TV and they think it's real, and they think,
Yeah.
oh, that guy is really Captain America. He's really fighting all those people. That definitely happens. You can do that physically.
Yeah.
You
Chris
can throw
Evans,
someone through a wall and they'll be fine.
you think they just wait around waiting for like Captain America to like turn into fire because they saw him do that in another movie once?
They keep DMing him like Chris Evans, and they're like, oh, how dare you in Knives Out, you were so mean. That's
Yeah.
not Captain America.
They were so confused in that movie where James Bond tried to investigate the murder of a Nazi that sang a lot of songs who was ended up being murdered by Captain America. Like how did a Nazi have Captain America for a grandson? That doesn't make sense.
Wow, what a crossover that was. Ryan Johnson once again.
Yeah. They had that family. They had the cop from Miami Vice. They had Laurie Strode from Halloween. Like this was the most famous family of all time. Captain America. It's just super famous family.
Yeah, we gotta wait for Wyatt Russell to show up.
Yeah.
Knives Out too.
Knives Out too. I still say I want that movie to go the opposite end of the spectrum. This was like a white, rich, upper class family. Get set Knives Out too in a trailer park. I think that would be amazing.
I'm down for that.
But we're no longer talking about Captain.
Yeah, this is not the
Falcon
Knives
and
Out podcast.
Falcon and Winter Soldier. So unless you have any final thoughts,
yeah, I mean we mentioned it, but I'm super into this show. I can't wait for these next 2 episodes. I'm gonna have a great time watching, a great time talking about them with you, and then it'll be a long wait for the next Marvel show.
Not really.
I'm all in, and these even just a couple of weeks off between this and Loki. But I'm more excited for Hawkeye. I think that's gonna be more of a direct influence in the story. I think I'm more interested in that than Loki. But the Loki trailer was good, so. I guess I'm in.
I mean, this is still a Disney Plus show, so I'm gonna drop it. I have a theory about the overall plot of Loki. I think like a lot of the early episodes are gonna be very WandaVision-esque, where he's going off on like random adventures that really don't matter. They're gonna be like fun and whatever, but ultimately story-wise, they're not gonna matter. I think the ultimate end of the show, or like, purpose of the show is Loki is gonna have to do things to set up things that happen in the MCU. Like I could see a situation where like he has to set something up for like Steve Rogers' plane to fail, so he crashes in the ice and freezes, and he has to do like all of these things and set certain things up so he can set that basically the MCU as we know it in motion. And I think at the end he's gonna sacrifice him, die, and that's gonna be the end of Loki forever. Like we're not seeing Loki anymore.
Big prediction. I like that a lot, that he's going through setting up the timeline, because I think the trailer hinted that he's fixing the timeline somehow. Yeah. So I think that would be interesting that he has to go back and, without any acknowledgement of the characters, like fix the timeline. So you can go back and watch the movies again and be like, oh, there's Loki in the background. Like it's not actually going to be there, but it could be like, oh, here's the scene where Loki fixed the plane to crash. Here's a scene where like Loki set this guy up to do this, and that could be kind of fun.
What if they like completely ruin something? Like you find out it wasn't actually Bucky that killed Tony's parents, but it was Loki as Bucky that killed Tony's parents.
Yeah, they go in and just completely retcon like the entire thing.
Yeah. It would kind of be amazing, but I would be mad. I would be mad. Like the thing that makes me mad most in the MCU right now, like storyline wise, retconning wise, is the dumb fucking cat taking out Nick Fury's eye after the badass line, because it ruins that line in Winter Soldier. That's the thing, that if they never brought it up, if that line is not in Winter Soldier and that's just how he lost his eye, it'd be like funny and I'd be perfectly okay with it. But the fact that it ruins that like badass line in my favorite MCU movie is what pisses me off. I think that would piss me off more if they were like, oh, like all this setup with Bucky and it wasn't even Bucky, it was Loki.
Yeah, I'm all excited for Loki though. I think it's gonna, like you said, expand some stuff to the MCU. It's gonna be, I think, what people expected WandaVision to be. I think it's gonna bring in a lot of the
Yep.
multiverse, a lot of the more insane stuff that
Yep.
people are expecting from that show. Versus this show that is very much grounded and very
Yeah.
much focused on the characters. And you,
Yeah.
outside of a couple of the action scenes, this could be like any other spy thriller in a way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's just heightened with like super soldiers and stuff, but yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see Owen Wilson too. I never thought I'd see him in the MCU.
Yeah, we got a lot of interesting MCU people coming up. You know, we've got Haley Steinfeld coming in. We've got Oscar Isaac coming in.
Wait, who's Oscar Isaac?
He's playing Moon Knight.
Oh yeah, yeah, I like that. That's good. But yeah, should be fun. Should be interesting.
And we'll be here covering every episode
Yeah.
of every one of these shows.
I think there's talks of us doing a like Phantom Menace drink along this weekend, but I'm not 100% sure. We gotta nail that down. So watch that, check that out. Otherwise, our next episode of movie Changeup is gonna be this Monday at 7. It's me versus Bobby. We've been talking about this match a while, but it got delayed because of reasons. But this episode will not get delayed, hopefully. So enjoy the rest of your evening. It's 12:48 a.m. So I guess enjoy the rest of your morning. Have a nice night.
See you guys.